This is CGTN, China Global Television Network.
Hello there and welcome to Global Business Africa. We'll be giving you insight into Africa's business and financial markets. I'm Uche Okoronkwo coming to you from Kenya's capital, Nairobi. Let's start with a look at the markets. Now, emerging market stocks were hammered today by fast receding risk appetite. We saw MSCI's index of emerging market equities dropping 2.1%, suddenly engulfed by risk aversion on fears of a slowdown in global trade. South Africa's JSE has been tracking Asian stocks after the prolonged US-China trade war escalated last week. We saw the bourse was down almost 3% on the day. Over in Nigeria, the market was fairly stagnant, but it was supported by Dangote flour, which we saw climb 10% on the day. Now, also coming up on the show, 20 people dead in a terrorist explosion in Egypt. Zimbabwe raises fuel prices for the 6th time this year. And bakers from Ghana and Nigeria battle it out at a cake fair in Accra. Well, let's start off the show in Egypt, where the presidency has confirmed that Sunday's car crash was indeed a terrorist attack. Now, according to a statement made by the country's Interior Ministry, the blast happened when a car driving against traffic collided with 3 other cars. The car was allegedly carrying a bomb meant to be used in an attack elsewhere, but it was denotated by the crash. The incident occurred outside Egypt's main cancer hospital, causing major damage to the building's front side and forcing immediate evacuation of 54 patients. At least 20 people have been killed and 47 others injured in the explosion. Egyptian police say Hasm, an armed group with links to the banned Muslim Brotherhood, was behind this attack.
There was a sound of an extremely loud blast. I suspect the car must have been rigged with explosives. The explosion made the apartments next to the road shake. And after people left their houses, we saw a strong blaze of fire. It was a strange situation. I don't think it was just a car crash.
Well, let's get more on this incident and the security situation in the country. We're joined by CGTN's correspondent Yasser Hakim. He joins us now in Cairo. Yasser, great to have you on the show. Now, the government has described the crash as a terrorist attack. What more information is out since, of course, it has been established and has it been established where the car was headed?
Yes, it's still unknown where the target was, or what was the target by Hasm, the terrorist organization that is linked to the outlawed Muslim Brotherhood. But investigations are underway to determine the reasons and the target that was set by this group. Like you said, it was not meant to be at that location. The car was bomb-laden, was probably on its way to the target, which was nearby, and it was moving against or opposite to the road, and I think that's why it collided with one of the cars, and the bombs went off inside this car. The car was a stolen car from another city, and obviously the government is still trying to investigate and to understand what was there. We have to also say that Hasm itself still has not claimed responsibility, although the government says this carries the hallmark of Hasm, the outlawed terrorist Islamic group.
Well, yeah, so this does raise concerns, especially for businesses, about the security situation in the country. Of course, we know just last month, British Airways, as well as Germany's Lufthansa, they cancelled flights to Cairo due to safety concerns. Is it accurate to say the security situation in Egypt is quite tense right now?
Well, we can say that obviously there is a war on terrorism in Egypt. The government has launched this war 2 years ago. It's mostly happening in the northern Sinai tip of Egypt, close to the borders with Gaza. That's where most of the terrorist group, militants have been cordoned off in the desert in that area. Obviously, there has been some attempts around other cities in Egypt. And yes, of course, there is still the threat of terrorist attacks. However, it has improved. The security situation has improved drastically in the last 2 or 3 years. According to statistics by CAPMAS, the number of attacks has dropped by 95% in 2017, 2018, if you compare it to 2015, 2014, 2015. And in 2018 as well, it has dropped by further 20%, making it only a difference of 5%. So there is a lot of improvement, but obviously there's still some time to totally eradicate terrorism from the country and from the region as a whole. Obviously, it's not easy because Egypt is in the middle of some hotspots in the world, not just in the area. You've got Libya on one side, where terrorism has been on the rise because of the political differences and the chaos there. You've got Syria, you've got Iraq, you've got obviously the instability in Sudan has also given room for militants to move into the borders, from these borders into Egypt. So the threats and the risk is still there. And even as the Egyptian president himself said, it will take some time to get rid of terrorism completely, not just from Egypt, but from the area or the region.
Well, yeah, so let's shift our focus to a more positive note. Now, we know President El-Sisi and new British Prime Minister Boris Johnson, they spoke this weekend. What we hear is that Johnson praised efforts to improve the investment climate as well as infrastructure in the country. What more came out of that call between the two leaders?
Yes, the UK is one of the largest investors in Egypt, with over $47 billion of investments in the last 10 years alone. So there is a lot of investments in transportation and healthcare, in gas and oil and gas from British companies, and obviously trade. And I think the UK Prime Minister is also looking at Egypt, working with Egypt as an important partner in North Africa and the Middle East after Brexit. And I think this is one of many countries, obviously the UK will be trying to target to try to improve and increase its trade and investment opportunities after the breakaway from the EU. At the same time, both leaders also agreed that they will meet in person for the first time as Prime Minister, obviously, Boris Johnson, in the G7 meetings in the month ahead. And they will be discussing not just economic and trade cooperation, but also the peace process in the Middle East and means to work together on ending conflict in several areas, including Libya and Syria and Yemen. So there is a host of talks between both topics, tough and hot topics to discuss, and they have agreed to go into more details during their meeting in the G7 in the next couple of weeks.
All right, we'll certainly be watching. Many thanks, Yasser, for that update. Yasser Hakim joining us there in Cairo. Well, let's shift our focus now to Zimbabwe. The country has once again raised the prices of fuel by as much as 26%. This is the fourth time the government is increasing fuel prices since June. Now, since January, the price of fuel in the country has risen by more than 500%. The hikes follow last week's decision by the Finance Ministry to raise import taxes on fuel, adding more pressure on citizens who, of course, are grappling with triple-digit inflation. However, most pumps across Zimbabwe still remain dry. The government is trying to end subsidies by raising the value of fuel and electrical energy tariffs, as well as placing its funds on a powerful footing. But the move is raising inflation and eroding salaries in the Southern African nation. Well, let's get more on this from Farai Mwakutuya. He joins us in Harare. Farai, always great to have you on the show. Now, fuel prices, they've been increased 4 times since June. The country, of course, as we mentioned, grappling with fuel shortages. What was the rationale behind the government's decision?
Well, Uche, fuel in Zimbabwe has been subsidized, heavily subsidized at that, for a very long time. And it all dates back to this period when there was this official one-to-one parity between bond notes and US dollars. That was the official position, but not the reality on the ground. The parallel market rate at the time was more reflective of the exchange rate. And at the one-to-one value that the government was insisting on, fuel was heavily subsidized. Since the local currency has been allowed to float now, and the introduction of this interbank foreign exchange market, we've started to see the price of fuel coming up. And just a few weeks ago, in fact, we heard the finance minister indicate that the sort of target price they're expecting it to settle at is the equivalent of about $1 per liter for petrol. And at the current prices, where it's gone up now to about $9.01, that is just about $1 or below $1. So looking at the interbank market rate, it is sitting at about $1, which is the target that they're looking at. The rationale, Uche, is that this market-driven price, this more realistic price, will be more viable for fuel dealers and operators, enable them to be able to source foreign currency through the official market so they can bring in the fuel. One of the challenges, apart from the shortage of foreign currency that has been cited, is the fact that fuel has been subsidized, that the price is not economic, and so by doing this, hopefully that will also increase supplies.
But Farai, just last week, we saw at the medium-term policy meeting, Finance Minister Nkube, he increased the price of the little power that's available in the country right now. And now we're seeing this increase in fuel prices. Now, given the immense pressure that we're seeing citizens are facing, what has been the reaction to this recent decision?
Well, Uche, I think the reactions are obviously of disappointment, of dejection, a lot of unhappiness because of what's happening here. I think many citizens feeling that, you know, they continue to be put under pressure. They are continuing to have to tighten their belts. Yes, Zimbabweans are under austerity, but I think the patience of many Zimbabweans is wearing thin with those austerity measures. Many of them asking, when will the pain end? We understand that it is necessary to swallow some of this bitter medicine, but when will it end? And so those are the feelings that Zimbabweans are having. There's a saying that's going around here where they're saying everything is going up except salaries and wages. And indeed, there has been a consistent increase in prices since the beginning of the year, and there hasn't been a commensurate increase in salaries and wages. And I think what that will lead to, and the reaction that we'll start to see from more labor unions, is the threat or the possibility of industrial action. A number of workers have said that they are incapable of coming to work. They want to come to work, but simply can't afford it because the price of transport has gone up, the price of fuel has gone up. So while they want to come to work, they can't come to work. And I think going forward, we're likely to see more of these, threats of industrial action where employees, where unions will say, look, we want to come to work, but are unable to. And so hopefully there has to be some reprieve or some sort of relief in terms of higher wages or an adjustment in that respect.
Well, many thanks, Farai, for that update. As always, great to have you on the show. That was Farai Mwakutuya joining us there in Harare, Zimbabwe. Let's shift focus now. Take a look at our corporate headlines today. Now, state-owned South African defense firm Denel expects to receive government support in the third quarter. This is after the Department of Public Enterprises and the National Treasury said they're satisfied with the progress Denel has made on its turnaround plan. The company, which is a cornerstone of the country's once mighty defense industry, last month asked for a $190 million cash injection in order to help it emerge from a financial crisis. They are yet to release details on the size of any cash injection yet. And Kenyan regional retailer Tusky says it has enrolled about 200 merchants after it opened its e-commerce platform to local vendors. The firm is stepping up competition with popular online shopping sites such as Jumia, Kilimall, and Safaricom's Masoko. Now, Tusky says it is growing its revenue streams by diving into the e-commerce space franchising and opening a small format locally and in Uganda over the last 1 year. The firm anticipates that in the next 2 years, e-commerce will account for about 20% of its total revenue. And MTN's fast-growing Ghanaian business increased earnings by more than half in the 6 months to end June, and that's thanks in part to better mobile money revenues. Its Ghana operation, which is the group's 4th largest market by subscribers, grew earnings before tax to $220 million. Now, MTN mobile money revenue increased about 53.3%, mainly thanks to a higher number of person-to-person transactions, as well as good growth in more advanced services such as retail merchant payments. Subscriber numbers increased 6.2% to 21.3 million. And finally, UK bank HSBC plans to axe about 4,000 jobs. The financial institution, which is fresh from revealing the exit of its CEO, John Flint, announced that the firings are part of a new overhaul. Now, the restructuring involves 2% of their workforce, and the job losses will target more senior ranks of the business. That's a look at our corporate headlines. Well, we're heading into a quick break now. Here's a look at what's still to come. Nigeria plans to raise access to financial services. We look at their strategy. And unemployment is on the rise in many parts of Africa. We look at some causes and some of the possible solutions.
Every story starts out like this.
Okay. We'll head up now.
But beyond the rush of the numbers, there's always a more fundamental question. What happened? Who has been affected? When market-moving decisions are made, who's responsible and why?
Let's get some reaction on ground. Joining us in Johannesburg is Sutra. Hello, Nairobi.
This is how all stories begin. See how they end. Only on Global Business.
There's more to this place than just glorious landscapes. There's more to it than just, say, Table Mountain or glorious, endless salt flats. There's more to it than countries that are home to some of the deepest mines in the world. There is so much more to this place, even if it is home to some of the finest diamonds on the planet. It is the sheer diversity of the people who call Southern Africa home, and the relentless drive to make it a better place that make it so special. And we know that because this too is home. No one knows Southern Africa like we do. CGTN, see the difference.
Welcome back. Now, millions of Nigerians, especially local businessmen and women in rural areas, don't have access to banking services. Now, at the moment, only about 60% of the country's roughly 100 million adults operate bank accounts. That's despite the central bank setting a target to achieve around 80% financial inclusion by next year. Well, CGTN's Phili Haza explains.
Sarah Teva sells grocery items at this small roadside market on the outskirts of Abuja. Teva has never opened a bank account before, and she says due to financial difficulty, she doesn't see the need to.
This is what I know like. Let me say I know like. I don't make use of banks because the little profit I make from this petty trade is not even enough to feed my family, pay my children's school fees and other bills. So there's no money. That's why I haven't opened a bank account yet.
Open account. That is why I don't open it.
The Central Bank of Nigeria, CBN, set up a national financial inclusion strategy in 2012 to help achieve its goal of improving adult financial inclusion rate in the country from about 46% in 2010 to as low as 20% by 2020. One of the strategies by the Apex Bank is for bankers to sensitize local traders on the importance of banking services in a bid to get them to register. Operating bank accounts could give access to a range of affordable financial services, also known as financial inclusion. However, experts say it's an enormous task changing the mindset of local traders.
One of the challenges we tend to encounter is about social, physiological factors. Most customers, most micro traders have this natural belief of keeping their money at home because they just believe that they can easily have access to it, forgetting that they can as well tamper their daily savings. And two, they just feel that the bank tend to have too many charges. But then, currently, the charges have been dropped.
With 1 year left to go, about 40 million more micro traders are still unbanked. In order to close up this gap, the Apex Bank has mandated all commercial banks to open at least 1,500 savings accounts per month, while microfinance banks have a target of 2,500 per month. Experts say the goal is still achievable if more banks comply with the CBN's directive.
I will actually encourage every deposit money bank and every microfinance bank to actually key into this initiative, because by so doing, we are bringing our physical presence to the market, go from shop to petty traders to open these bank accounts, because we believe that by telling them in details, we can be able to boost their daily savings, because if we don't tell them one-on-one, they might think that it's really ambiguous and not possible to access these banks.
The Apex Bank reports a progress of about 60% financial inclusion for adults so far and is optimistic of achieving its target of 80% by next year.
Many experts believe that having more financial institutions in rural areas to provide a range of affordable financial services to low-income earners will rapidly increase their productivity. They say that will positively impact Africa's largest economy. Phil Ihaza, CGTN, Abuja, Nigeria.
Well, let's head to Kenya now. The country has to create at least 900,000 jobs annually between now and 2025 in order to absorb the high number of youths who are joining its job market. Now, according to the latest report by the World Bank, 9 million individuals are forecast to enter the Kenyan labor force in a decade. This is set to further push up the country's unemployment rate. Last year, the Kenyan economy grew by nearly 6.3%, which yielded some 840,600 new jobs. But despite that growth, the World Bank says the East African nation is still producing low-quality jobs. It projects that Kenya's unemployment rate will increase by about 10.5% this year before slowing to 10% next year. Well, let's delve further into this with Lorna Kanyuga. She's a project manager at Gigi Johnny, which of course is a virtual training and mentorship program that enables graduates to find jobs or start up a business in Kenya. Great to have you on the show.
Thank you so much
Lorna.
for having me.
Now, of course, you heard the statistics there. Unemployment set to rise above 10% this year. Data showing that Kenya needs to create about 900,000 jobs annually in order to absorb those who are going to enter the job market. So give me your take. Is the problem the number of jobs available, or is it the skills or the number of skilled workers that are available?
So I'll say it's a little bit of both, but I'll tweak the options you give me a little bit, yeah? So when it comes to the jobs, I would say it's the quality of jobs. So how do we even define employment? What does it mean to be employed? Because when you look at some of the reports, they would count someone who's working maybe 3 hours a day as having been employed, and maybe they're not making enough money to meet their needs, you see. On the other side of skills, I feel like that's where now we come in, because what you've observed is that we have graduates coming out of university and they have papers, they have qualifications. But interestingly, the companies that are looking to hire are saying we can't hire these graduates because they don't have skills, so they can't actually do the job. Right. So there is actually a huge problem when it comes to the skills, and that's what is leading to graduates being unemployed. Yeah.
Now, your program, Gijali,
yes.
It's a virtual training and mentorship program, and it's meant to sort of plug that gap. Tell me exactly what need you're going to be fulfilling for these graduates who are looking for jobs.
Yeah. So when it comes to the Career Start module, there are a couple of things we cover. So we cover how do you figure out what kind of job to go into, because we live in an age whereby you have this degree, but you don't necessarily have to follow that path. You could do something else, yeah? We also train them on how to figure out themselves, what are they good at, what are your skills, and then now after they've gone into that, how do they package themselves? So how do they talk about themselves in interviews? How do they write their CV and things like that? So what has happened in the career module, we have participants saying things like, I'm finally hearing back from interviews because I now understand what I was doing wrong in the job search process. Or we have other people saying, I now understand what career I want to go into and how I can get started on that. On the business side, we have people who are able to start businesses. They're able to identify what business do I want to go into. They're able to test it out and validate it. And for those who already have businesses, they're able to figure out what is kind of causing their business not to grow. And they're able to figure out, how do I get my business from this level to the next one?
Right.
Yeah.
But if you think about it, it's sort of a shame that you have to be teaching them this. Aren't our educational institutions meant to be teaching them this? Do you think our institutions, educational and our government institutions, are failing graduates on the continent today?
Yes, definitely. When you see that someone has come out of university with a degree and they're being told you don't have the skills I need, then there's a problem there, because it means that we are not teaching people the skills that they actually need to be successful in the workplace, or we are not teaching young people the skills they need to figure out how to start and run a successful business. So there's definitely a huge gap in that area. We need to kind of look at our education system and start focusing more on the practical skills. It's great to know how to do things like chemical equations and all of that, but you also need to know how to work together in a team. You need to know how to have critical thinking, how to be proactive, how to problem solve. So all of these are critical skills that are largely lacking in our education system. Yes.
Now, how are you handling, and what have you found in terms of this new ideology that it's better to become an entrepreneur instead of go into employment? You know, are you seeing that? Are these the trends that you're seeing with the people who are coming to you? And what are your thoughts on that ideology?
Yes, so I would say there has been a stronger lean towards entrepreneurship. And when you talk about unemployment, you'll hear people saying things that like, you shouldn't be looking for jobs, you should be out there creating the jobs. So stop depending on an employer, go out and become an employer yourself. But at the same time, not everyone is made for employment, yeah? And what you find is actually a lot of people are going into business because they don't have an option. So we had trainings whereby when we talk about the statistics of the success of the people in the career module, people drop out of the business module and go into the career because they're like, I didn't realize I could actually get a job, so I don't want to do a business anymore. So while I think entrepreneurship is fantastic, I also think that it would be really great if young people are starting businesses because they've seen an opportunity. They've seen something that is missing and they feel that they can do something about it, as opposed to, I have no choice. Yes.
Well, thank you so much for joining us in the studio in that great discussion. Of course, that was Lorna Kanyuga. She's a project manager at Gigi Johnny. Well, let's move on now. UNICEF, in partnership with Colombian social enterprises, has broken ground on a factory that converts plastic waste, which is collected in Cote d'Ivoire, into modular plastic bricks. The easy-to-assemble, durable, low-cost bricks are being used to build the much-needed classrooms in the West African nation. Now, with the details, here's CGTN's Penina Karibe.
As in many African countries, education has been a pressing need in Cote d'Ivoire. Many children still do not have enough quality learning spaces, and the country needs 15,000 classrooms to meet the needs of these children. To help bridge this gap, UNICEF has come up with an innovative solution. It has partnered with a Colombian company, Conceptos Plásticos, to use plastic waste collected from around the capital, Abidjan, to build the classrooms. Abidjan produces more than 280 tons of plastic waste every day, making it the obvious choice for the production plant to be based. The first classroom, constructed purely of plastic waste bricks, was put up last year. Since then, 17 more classrooms have been constructed around the country, each accommodating up to 50 pupils.
We got young people from the community that is just next to school, and we told them this is how you put the bricks together. And then they went ahead and we built a class within 3 days. So the ease with which you put up the bricks, the speed at which you put up the bricks. The bricks are plastic, 100% plastic with fire retardant properties. So they are waterproof, water doesn't go through. You don't need cement, you don't need sand, you don't need water. You just need the kit and you set it up.
They look like stones and feel like wood, except all of this is plastic recycled into bricks. Now those behind the project say they're up to 50 times stronger than the earth blocks. They can withstand strong winds and are fire resistant. Besides offering solutions to the plastic waste problem, the project is especially benefiting women from low-income households who have long been using the method to put food on the table.
The idea is that with this product and with them working directly with the partner, Kosepe Plastico, they're able to be financially empowered because the company is going to work directly with them and pay directly to them, which is not the current arrangement they have with the different market stakeholders at the moment.
The project is only just getting off the ground, and once the recycling plant is fully operational, it is expected to recycle up to 9,600 tons of plastic waste a year and provide a steady source of income to those involved. But for UNICEF, this project also presents an opportunity to do more for these women. It educates them on how to provide proper care to their children.
Telling them about proper, exclusive breastfeeding for the first 6 months for the baby, telling them about child protection, telling them about vaccination, making sure that they participate in campaigns like mosquito net distribution.
Western Central Africa accounts for 1/3 of the world's primary school-age children and 1/5 of lower secondary-age children who are out of school. This project, however, is looking to diminish those numbers, and plans are underway to scale it to other countries in the region. Penina Karibe, CGTN, in Abidjan, Côte d'Ivoire.
You're watching Global Business Africa. Let's head into a quick break. Coming up on the show. China's central bank defends the depreciation of the yuan as normal. And the new face of London, electric black cabs.
Business in Africa is at a crossroads. We celebrate those who are adopting and thriving despite the challenges, from grassroots to big businesses. Global Business takes you along for the ride as we track the making of a giant. Only on CGTN.
How will your world change today? What happens here? What happens there? Or what do you make happen for yourself? If it matters to you, it matters to us too. Your stories are the stories that need to be told. Africa Live. Find your voice.
Just about 1:30, let's recap today's top headlines. A drone airstrike by eastern Libyan forces on the southern Libyan town of Murzouk has reportedly killed at least 43 people. Now, according to a local official, 51 others were wounded. The LNA forces, loyal to Khalifa Haftar, confirmed the strike on the town but denied they had targeted civilians. At the start of the year, the LNA had taken Murzouk as part of an offensive to control the oil-producing south. And the Egyptian presidency says a huge explosion caused by a speeding car in central Cairo overnight, killing at least 20 people, was a terrorist incident. The collision happened just before midnight Sunday. According to an earlier statement by the country's interior ministry, the blast happened when a car driving against traffic collided with 3 other cars. And crowds of jubilant Sudanese have welcomed the signing of Sudan's constitutional declaration. It is hoped that this power-sharing deal between the military council and the pro-democracy movement will lead to a return to civilian rule. Now, leaders from both camps initiated the document on a Sunday, and an official signing will take place later this month. A Nigerian cleric, Sheikh Zakzaki, has been granted leave to seek medical treatment in India. Zakzaki, the founder of the Islamic movement in Nigeria, has been in detention since December 2015. Now, for months, supporters of Zakzaki have been protesting on the streets of the capital, Abuja, calling for his release. Sheikh Zakzaki has been charged with culpable homicide and other offenses, all of which he denies. And that's a recap of today's headlines. Now, on the international stage, the Chinese yuan has weakened as both the onshore and offshore yuan traded at above 7 per US dollar. Now, this comes as China's central bank set the midpoint rate of the yuan at 6.92 against the greenback. This marks the weakest level as the currency is allowed a rise or fall of 2% from each day's midpoint rate. The midpoint rate is based on a weighted average of prices offered before the opening of yuan trading. Now, after kicking off the onshore session at 6.9 per dollar, the yuan passed the 7 per US dollar mark, with the offshore yuan following suit. Now, markets view the yuan above 7 per dollar as surpassing a key technical barrier. Now, the Chinese central bank says a recent fluctuation in the currency is normal. The weakening of the currency against the US dollar comes at the expectation of additional US tariffs on Chinese goods. However, the People's Bank of China notes that the yuan remains strong against a basket of currencies, including the euro and the pound. Now, the PBOC reiterated on Monday that it has the confidence and ability to keep the yuan exchange rate relatively stable. Meanwhile, protesters in Hong Kong have launched a citywide strike today, disrupting air, road and rail transport. More than 2,300 aviation workers reportedly took sick leave, causing the cancellation of more than 200 flights. Subway services were suspended in the morning but resumed in the afternoon. There were also multiple blockades that closed down major roads. Now, some protesters have attacked police stations. Hong Kong authorities have condemned the latest violence and the use of separatist slogans.
Recently, what they said, the glorious restoration of Hong Kong and the revolution of our time, are a challenge to one country, two systems and national sovereignty. What they're doing is to overturn Hong Kong, to ruin life for 7 million people.
I appeal to all the people to stick to their positions. Any strike will do no good to Hong Kong, to residents' daily lives, or our city's economic activities. I hope we can all calm down.
The GDP growth in the second quarter is 0.6%. It seems similar to the figure of the first quarter. But think about it, if we consider seasonal adjustment, the real growth is actually minus 0.3%. Our economic growth has lost momentum, and technically speaking, if that negative trend continues, the third quarter will face a downturn.
Well, let's move on now. Smartphone makers around the world are embracing the new generation of communication by launching 5G mobile devices. Now, many in and outside the industry view Chinese tech giant Huawei as a global leader in the field. But what lies within many of its products and devices is often forgotten. Well, our reporter Omar Khan paid a visit to one of Huawei's tech labs in South China to get a closer look at some of the core technologies that the company has developed.
With the unveiling of the Mate 20X smartphone, Huawei is ushering in the 5G era. But behind the glamour of the final product, and perhaps out of the spotlight, lies years of research and development.
Since the year 2009, Huawei already invested around $4 billion in the 5G basic technology development, standard development, and also the equipment development.
The Shenzhen-based firm has over 80,000 people working in R&D, accounting for nearly 50% of its workforce. And at one of Huawei's many labs in South China, a range of experiments and tests are being carried out to fuel the 5G rollout. Here at Huawei's Advanced Thermal Laboratory, scientists are exploring the latest in heat dissipation technology for 5G base stations. And it's exactly these units that will eventually power 5G networks and coverage. There's also this structure material lab, which was established back in 2012. Since then, engineers have studied the impact of harsh weather conditions and diverse environments on 5G equipment. Scientists say the units will have to be able to withstand corrosive substances, fluctuating temperatures, and water.
So we've got coating technologies to avoid snow or water accumulation on the surface of antenna cover to make sure that the covered snow won't prohibit signal transmission.
These base stations will eventually be placed outdoors in various exposed areas. Engineers are using in-house developed technology known as active cooling and two-phase cooling to ensure that networks powered by these base stations can handle any climate.
For 5G, the heat is also another problem. So the heat generated by 5G chips is far more than the 4G chips. So here we also have material technology for heat dissipation.
Given Huawei's unique positioning within the 5G industry, it should come as no surprise that the company wants to deliver a product that so many people are eager to experience. From a business standpoint, their determination in R&D is translating into commercial success.
Until now, Huawei already signed more than 50 commercial contracts, 5G contracts, with a global leading operator. And also we already shipped more than 150,000 pieces of base stations. We are deploying and the operator are commercializing the 5G network right now.
With 5G-enabled phones set to be in consumers' hands in just a few weeks, what lies underneath the cover may well be an afterthought. But for Huawei and their efforts, that's a reality they'll gladly take. Omar Khan, CGTN, Dongguan, Guangdong Province.
Now, the streets of London have been marked by a new feature lately, electric black cabs. The manufacturer is London's electric vehicle company, a subsidiary of Chinese car manufacturer Geely. The company claims it has grabbed a 10% share of the market in the UK capital since launching the cars about 18 months ago. Here's CGTN's Richard Bestick reporting from London.
Pollution across London, although often invisible to the naked eye, is expensive, damage running into the billions of dollars according to political leaders in the capital. Over 2 million people subjected to illegal levels of toxic air. The health impact in crisis, according to City Hall.
So no more polluting taxis, no more polluting vehicles. It really reduced the pollution in London and reduced the health impacts that Londoners are facing.
With 13 million passengers on board so far and 21 million miles on the clock, London's new electric cab is already playing its part in cutting pollution levels, according to the manufacturer's LEVC, a subsidiary of the Chinese car-making giant Geely.
No date yet for when the company will go into profit with its electric cab, so the business model is still clearly bedding in.
LEVC has plans to replicate the electric cab's London success across Europe and as far away as Hong Kong. However, the company is highly dependent on the just-in-time delivery of component parts in the manufacturing process. The boss at the company keeping a wary eye on the rising threat of a no-deal Brexit, creating parts shortages.
The things that really would hurt us a lot, but not only us, the whole country, is a no-deal Brexit. Without a deal, really, I mean, we will get in trouble. We can predict already that after a certain time we would have to close our factory because we will run out of parts after a while for sure.
Export potential could also suffer from a possible crash in the value of the pound and new EU tariffs should there be a no-deal Brexit. Britain's Society of Motor Manufacturers says investment in the wider industry has fallen by more than 70% in the last 6 months over fears of a no-deal Brexit. For now, though, London cabbies say the new electric taxi has brought a positive shine to their pay packets, saving them an average of $125 a week in fuel compared to the old diesel cabs. Richard Bestick, CGTN, London.
And shifting focus now, a quick look at how commodities performed. Oil prices down on that renewed global economic growth concern after U.S. President Donald Trump threatened to escalate a trade war. We saw Brent crude down over 2% on, of course, worry that this could limit fuel demand in the world's two biggest crude consumers. On the other hand, we saw gold prices rising to a more than 6-year high. They gained more than 1% as the escalating trade conflict sent investors scurrying for the safety of the precious metal. Let's take a quick break now. Here's a look at what's coming up. Bakers from Ghana and Nigeria battle it out at a cake fair in Accra.
You don't find the stories of North Africa by sitting on the sidelines. No one else will take you where we can in North Africa. And no one else will show you what it's all about. CGTN, see the difference.
Now here's an update on the China-US trade war. China says it will temporarily not rule out the possibility of levying additional tariffs on imported US farm produce with deals made after August the 3rd. Now some related Chinese companies have halted purchases of American farm produce. The move comes after the US announced 10% tariffs on another $300 billion worth of Chinese goods, which of course violated the consensus reached during the G20 summit held at the end of June in Osaka, Japan. Chinese authorities indicate that China has a large market capacity and a bright prospect for importing high-quality agricultural produce from the US. China hopes the US will conscientiously implement the consensus which was reached between the two countries. Well, let's head back to the continent now. Cane weaving is a subsector of the building and construction industry in Nigeria. However, given the high demand for imported upholstery, the art is fast becoming extinct. Well, CGTN's Deji Badmus met two men in Abuja, the country's capital, who are holding on to the tradition regardless of overwhelming competition.
Talk about artistry with precision and tact at play. These hands have undergone many years of training to be able to weave these different patterns and designs, which ordinarily appear very complex. Cane weaving is a very popular Nigerian art, which can be traced way back to pre-colonial times, and Donald's story attests to this fact. The art is deeply rooted in his genealogy. He has a background in farming and fishing, and what he now does with the cane is something he inherited from his father.
My home father origin now starts from the cane. We transport it outside Nigeria, so we use it to make a living, to support the farming. So as long as in our say we should migrate to the cane, we should leave the bankere, we should come to the foreign one like the cane. So we enter the cane and I started using it for bed, shears, baskets, for December hamper, salad.
The durability of their products stand them out, and that stems from the fact that every of the material they use is locally sourced.
We don't import a single material. Everything we use, we get from here. We source them from our forest here and transform them into the beautiful pieces you see around you.
My customers, there are many. Like when you build us, like a estate, we be the one planting the flowers, put your shears, your bush shears, your post side, put in those shears. We can put rubber, we can put cane, we can put rope to design those facilities.
Bars, restaurants and hotels are their biggest customers. This restaurant is designed with furniture purchased from Donald and his colleague. The restaurant manager says apart from creating the African ambience in her local food store, the furniture is also sending a signal for why made-in-Nigeria products should be patronized.
Everybody is used to the usual plastic chairs and tables at other local restaurants. And we only felt it's right to give, something different, something African, something cultural. And if you go abroad, you can never find a place like this. You don't ever go to a restaurant abroad and you see tables or the furniture, let me just say the furniture is made out of African sources.
Donald and Abednego are looking to grow in their business out of this roadside park, but they say that might be difficult to happen because they don't enjoy good patronage, saying most Nigerians still choose imported furniture over locally made ones.
If you go to the village, even the royal chief, most of them don't use this one in their palace. They prefer the king palace. You put upholstery. I want government to put more attention to what we are doing, to create a platform, a place where we, not just only me and my colleagues, the ones that they are doing this job, to have a place we can settle, where we can do this job and we can make more income to the economy.
With little or no formal education, these men have gone ahead to provide sources of income for themselves. Their intention is to train as many people as possible and also pass the trade down to their children as well. Deji Badmo, CGTN, Abuja, Nigeria.
Meanwhile, Syrian migrants in Sudan have found a niche for themselves in the restaurant business. Now, in the capital Khartoum, Syrian eateries are popular among Sudanese customers looking for a little variety. Here's CGTN's Daniela Pearson reporting.
Malik Abdul Wahab, from the city of Aleppo in Syria, came to Sudan shortly after the war began back home. His restaurant, Ayam El Sham, or Days of the Levant, is one of many that line an upscale neighborhood in the Sudanese capital, Khartoum.
Before in Sudan, there was no very well-known food. They are known for beans, falafel and other things. But we came and added crispy Mexican recipes, chicken roasting machines, pizza among others, and a shawarma, and we thank God for the quality we have.
Khartoum residents now flock to restaurants serving Syrian delicacies. Locals say that it's often hard to find a table at restaurants in the Kafuri district. It's also led to fierce competition between the restaurants themselves.
The place is clean and attractive, and the food you find here is different and varied. Also, what makes Syrian food different is their welcome. It gives a special taste for food. This is what interests me in Syrian restaurants, and they are also very serious about cooking. It makes you feel the taste you see in films.
Syrian food is always different in taste and in quality. We as Arabs from an Islamic culture like to come to the Syrian restaurant because it has a different taste and a different quality from our Sudanese brothers. And we tell them, you're highly welcome to Sudan.
Syrians are granted visa-free entry into Sudan. Since 2011, more than 20,000 have arrived, fleeing the conflict that erupted after a bloody crackdown on anti-government protests. Those that settled here enjoy the same rights as nationals, including access to healthcare and education.
Since the beginning of the Syrian civil war, we came to this country and we were warmly welcomed by our Sudanese brothers. They received us with hospitality, and now we don't feel like total strangers because of the hospitality they have shared with us. When you are in a foreign country, the people are good to you when you have good relations with them.
Sudanese society has welcomed the Levantine influences brought over by the Syrian migrants. Wahab's Restaurants has flourished since its inception and now has over 15 people on staff, most of them from Syria. Daniela Pearson, CGTN.
Now, bakers from Ghana and Nigeria are looking to rake in more profits from their cake and dessert businesses as they network at the 4th edition of the Ghana Cake Fair, which is held in Accra. Now, the fair saw the display of uniquely designed cakes and other desserts. Here's CGTN's Nabil Ahmed Rufai reporting from Accra.
Adding the finishing touches, Ruth Odita is a baker from Nigeria taking part in this year's Ghana Cake Fair held in Accra.
Everybody coming around to taste our products and they want to buy. Look at the exhibition. We came with our products all the way from Nigeria. A lot of purchase. They've been buying. We brought in money in our pockets. A lot has been coming steady. Honestly, I am very happy.
It's a delicious display of carefully crafted designs, and the bakers here compete with one another to come up with the most artistic and unique cakes of all different shapes and sizes.
We have done a lot of the cakes that people don't know we do. So today, as the fair is going on, they are seeing that we can do other cakes aside desserts for functions and the rest.
It's a big platform that will get people from all walks of life to come and then see what we do and also to want to buy from us. I mean, it's absolutely the best platform to want to showcase yourself as a baker.
For pudding lovers, it's a time to sample what's on display at the cake fair. Bakers here say the red velvet tops the list of orders they receive, and they're exploring ways of making the taste of the cake better and healthy for consumers. The event is not only being used to showcase the talents of these bakers, but also serving as a platform to boost their business.
We are seeking to help growing entrepreneurs and also growing baking businesses in Accra. A lot of people in this country, they complain they don't have jobs, so they rely on entrepreneurship. So a lot of them are bakers, and they need that platform and that push to push their business.
As the bakers get more creative with their designs, they say they hope their business sees a significant boost. Nabil Ahmed Rufai, CGTN, Accra, Ghana.
Now, as Africa's fashion industry becomes more popular, designers from around the continent are promoting African culture using its local fabric. This trend was on full display at Uganda's International Fashion Week in Kampala. Here's Isabel Nakeria reporting.
Models decked out in African prints hit the runway at Uganda's International Fashion Week. For the designers, these shows were about more than just fashion.
I think that we have so much interesting stories to tell and the world wants to hear it.
This event has drawn designers from all over the continent, and they are showcasing unique collections of African fabric with the aim of encouraging and promoting the African culture. Many of this year's designs have been praised as ready for the market.
Most of the times on the runways we have things that are extremely creative but not realistically wearable. So with this showcase this time, it was all things that you can wear, and it's good, it's fresh.
Many of the designers are looking into selling their products beyond Africa's borders. Tourism experts say fashion has the potential to sell the African image internationally.
One thing it has done is brought out the creativity. There are different pieces like the kikoi that was used that is very Ugandan, and the awareness that this has created, not only in Uganda but internationally. It's great for Uganda, it's great for fashion industry in Uganda, but also for tourism.
For these fashion designers, the goal is to continue to craft creative designs that will be a hit both at home and around the world. Isabel Nakiria, CGTN, Kampala.
Now, before we go, let's take a quick look at Africa's currencies today. South Africa's rand slipping to a 7-week lows against the dollar, of course, as prospects of a sharp escalation in the US-China trade war turned investors risk-averse. We saw Kenya's shilling holding steady against the dollar, with inflows from diaspora remittances and offshore investors buying a government debt that helped ease pressure from excess liquidity on the local money markets. Well, that's it for this edition of Global Business Africa. Remember, you can send your feedback to the contacts on your screen. You can also follow us on our various digital media platforms. From me, Uche Okoronkwo, and the rest of the team, thanks for watching.